The ego matrix can come in many, many different forms. They can come in the form of your religion, family, friends, job or occupation, social media. Many different ways the ego can try to trap you into losing your essential nature, your nameless sacred self. And this is done to create a feeling of distress, fear, the monotony of everyday living. But it always boils down to getting us to blindly protect and defend our personal separate sense of identity, our body-mind. The matrix can only seduce you when you allow yourself to fall into a false sense of personhood. When you, as nameless consciousness, take on the identity and the shape of an individual human being at the expense of your infinite self. Because the minute consciousness identifies with form, it opens the door to allow other conceptual thoughts, feelings, and identities to pile itself onto. You are no longer living in the vertical plane of consciousness. You are living on the horizontal. It starts by saying that I am the body. I am a male. I am female. I am black or I am white. I am a nice person. I am a bad person. Whatever it is that we tell ourselves based on the internal reference point as the person begins to control our perception. And when this happens, we lock ourselves into a mental prison where we start to substitute who we are for what we're not. This is the thing that we have to all look out for. It's important to stay in the witnessing mode of consciousness. And I am no way trying to minimize feelings that come from personhood. I'm merely stating that those are the things that trap us in a deceptive web of confusion, repressed emotions, judgments, trauma, resistance, habitual behaviors, and deep-seated limiting belief systems. It takes us away from the harmonious flow of our sacred self. The population has been programmed to fall into separateness. It's done in order to keep us in a divide-conquer paradigm, where we no longer see ourselves as one. We see ourselves as disconnected beings. And this way we're at war with ourselves. We turn on each other. We fight over petty differences. We are also going to fall into the survival mode. Everything becomes a threat from the outside. Everything becomes either an alliance to our separate sense of identity, or it's an attack. When we put ourselves in a state where negative self-talk, the feeling of external validation, approval, the need to control outward circumstances and people, we begin policing each other based on the rules of the ego matrix game. Even though it's important to observe your thoughts and emotions, not to be them. The Matrix program has us transfixed on our self-image. The self-portrait that we built about who we think we are. And this feeds us a daily dosage of self-absorption, separateness, limitation. We are all programmed to view and to serve the system in the same way. We rely on that for our own self-worth, our sense of value. The definition of a slave is to sacrifice oneself to build up others. We sacrifice our true, authentic self to build up the false pseudo-self of others in the ego game. We have been sold a lie, and the ego's game is denial. It likes hiding behind the mainstream media and the government. And generations of people that have been dominated by their egoic problems have passed it down to us. This allows us to see ourselves through the filters of the ego, to feel important and special. We compare ourselves with others. We look to find more things to consume, more possessions and trophies to own. We seek out things to complain about by being fed a daily dosage of misinformation through society. And the more you move outward in the world, the more confrontational you will be, and the less time you will have for your inner quest. Because the ego doesn't want you to change. It wants you to remain the same, keeping the old fear-based paradigms intact. It's important to know thyself. When you know yourself, then you could clearly see what is going on in the mind, so that you don't fall into the mind and start living in the mind. The world ego or collective ego is built on keeping other egos in line and under control. When we find who we are by our deep self-inquiry, we are no longer a match for other people's socially accepted roles. No longer trying to fit in to receive a sense of approval. We are no longer caught up within a sense of specialness or entitlement, investing our energies in the same set of disempowering, misaligned beliefs by the tribal mentality. We must not compromise ourselves for the sake of pleasing others. We have to release ourselves from the collective energies of egotism. We have to exit the systemic corruption of the mainstream propaganda machine. This mind-numbing construct that spews false narratives to the public that are incomplete and inaccurate. We must go beyond the current egoic program that dominates the collective consciousness of humanity. The driving force must be that of love. So stand before the naked truth of egoless presence. Dismantle the dark psyche within ourselves. The conscious mind must be in complete harmony with the divine will. This will anchor us to the present moment, where we can access our true power as the observers of thought. That's all I would like to say for today.